Hello everyone and welcome to another video. So recently I had one of you ask me how long I think each Doctor's tenure should have lasted for, in terms of whether they should have stayed longer or shorter, or the exact same amount of time that they did stay for. And this got me thinking, was about making a video all about this. That way not only would I share my own thoughts, but we could all have a much wider conversation about it, with all of you telling me about your thoughts on it. So that's what we're going to do for this video. Thank you to LeeBiggs14 for the idea. I hope you don't mind me turning it into a video. So without further ado, here's how long I think each Doctor's era should have lasted for, in an ideal world. Obviously we start things off with the first Doctor, William Hartnell. Personally, I feel like his era's length is absolutely fine as it is, as he had quite a fair amount of stories over his near 3 years in the part. If we had to absolutely insist on his era being extended for a bit, then perhaps a couple more stories with Ben and Polly, so that TARDIS crew gets more of a chance to develop and shine, even if Michael Craze and Annika Wills wouldn't have liked the prospect of working with William Hartnell for a bit longer. But I think anything beyond that just wouldn't be feasible with Hartnell's declining health. Next up is the second Doctor, Patrick Troughton. Again, I think his era lasted for a decent amount of time as it is. Whilst I did feel like it went by too quickly when I was rewatching it for my 60th anniversary marathon last year, I don't feel like anything more than perhaps a few more stories would be necessary. Although he is my favourite Doctor, so I'm not going to completely turn down more stories with him. I just don't think it would have been all that necessary. Interestingly, Patrick Troughton himself actually felt like he should have left earlier and not have stayed on for season 6, according to the biography of him written by his son Michael Troughton. This was due to the show having several issues with scripts at the time, with several being either rejected or commissioned really late, which stressed Troughton out, as he liked to know whatever he was supposed to perform with plenty of notice. He also didn't approve of the show relying so much on already existing monsters during that time, such as the Cybermen and the Ice Warriors. And let's not forget that the show's production schedule at the time was pretty awful, as the cast and crew spent 40 odd weeks every year working with only a few weeks off every now and then. How about the third Doctor, Jon Pertwee? Well, again, I don't think his era needed to last much longer than it did. 5 seasons in 4 years with 4 or 5 stories in each is a pretty good run. Having said that, however, it would have been nice to see Liz Shaw stay on for a bit longer. Maybe that could have been through the form of another full season, or maybe it could have just been another story or 2. So yeah, so far I haven't really wanted to change things that much, but all of that's about to change with the 4th Doctor, Tom Baker. As much as I like the 4th Doctor, and I don't really have an issue with Tom Baker staying in the role for 7 years, it might have been a good idea for him to have left a little bit earlier. This is something that even Tom himself has admitted since, as he feels like he stayed on for just too long. He could have left with Philip Hinchcliffe at the end of season 14, or at the end of season 15, or season 16, or even season 17. I just feel like by the time we get to season 18, he looks really tired and bored of the role at times. I know he was ill during the production of the first few stories, as well as having relationship issues with Lala Ward, but he just looks over it throughout much of that season, and I think that affects my judgment of the season as a whole. It's all well and good trying to do harder science fiction stories and try to explore then cutting edge scientific ideas, but if your leading man looks like he's just not happy to be there anymore, then there's only so much you can do, isn't there? As much as some fans may not like the Graham Williams era, at least Tom seems to actually care enough to put in a good performance 9 times out of 10. That might sound a bit harsh on Tom Baker and season 18, but I really don't mean it to. I just feel like the witty Douglas Adams humour was more to his personal tastes than the complicated, harder science fiction concepts of Christopher H. Bidmead. Anyway, let's move on to the 5th Doctor, Peter Davison. Again, just like Troughton's, his era seemed to go by really quickly when I was watching it as part of my 60th marathon. Maybe that's because of how much I enjoy it and his Doctor especially. Or maybe that's just when you compare it to Tom Baker's 7-year stint. I would have liked to have seen Davison stay on for maybe another season, just because he's also one of my favourites. But then again, the fact that he sacrifices his own life for Peri's, despite not knowing her for that long, comes across as very heroic and doctory, even if Big Finish have since set 27 million audios between Planet of Fire and the caves of Androzani. Unfortunately, even if Davison had stayed on for another year, I don't think that would have stopped Michael Grade from trying to cancel the show in 1985. But what about the 6th Doctor, Colin Baker? Well, I think he's one of the Doctors that most needed more time. Colin wanted to beat Tom Baker's record, and I believe he should have absolutely been given that chance. I think the way he was treated by the BBC high-ups at the time was so unfair and completely unjustified. Sure, his era on TV might have not always had the strongest scripts, but Colin himself was one of the few bits that kept everything together, and never gave anything less than 110% in terms of his performances. So yeah, Colin should have been allowed to stay on for as long as he wanted to. I would have loved to have seen how his Doctor developed over 8, 9 or however many years. I also think the 7th Doctor, Sylvester McCoy, should have had more time as well, although not quite as long as Colin wanted to stay on for. Maybe something like another season or 2 instead. The show definitely didn't deserve to be cancelled in 1989. It was just beginning to find its feet again with seasons 25 and 26, after a turbulent few years before that, and McCoy deserved to have more time to develop his really interesting and intriguing take on the Doctor. Another Doctor that deserved more time is the 8th Doctor, Paul McGann. As much as I've loved what Big Finish have done with him since, I do wish he'd had an actual run on TV. Even the standard 3 seasons would have been nice to see. I know that some fans may not like the idea of a more Americanized version of the show continuing off the TV movie, but I would have been at least curious to see how all that panned out. And as much as some fans might think that this would have just been a series of remakes of classic series stories, this isn't actually accurate. Sure, an early draft of what eventually became the TV movie did mention remakes, but this was only suggested by John Leakley in his Bible for the potential series, with no one else really being that keen on the idea. So we would have had entirely original stories with 8 if the TV movie had been more successful. Rounding off the Doctors that I believed deserved more time the most would be the 9th Doctor, Christopher Eccleston, and I don't believe this will be a very controversial opinion, as I think most fans would have loved to have seen more of Eccleston as the Doctor, and probably the same with Colin, McCoy and McGann too. But yes, it is such a shame that Eccleston only did 1 series. I would have loved to have seen him stay on for at least 1 more, perhaps a 3rd series as well. Obviously he left because of his deteriorating relationship with Russell T Davies, Julie Gardner and Phil Collinson, and it is a real shame that all of that happened. I think Eccleston did a great job in reinventing the Doctor for New Millennium, and moving away from the stereotypical older eccentric man in Edwardian clothes that the general public and press associated with the role. I don't think David Tennant's 10th Doctor should have stayed on for much longer than he did, although it might have been nice to have seen a fourth full series of stories, rather than the year of specials we got in 2009. Perhaps he could have travelled with Wilf and or Lady Christina for this fourth series. It's pretty much the same for Matt Smith's 11th Doctor. A fourth series might have been good to flesh the Trenzalore arc out a bit more, but beyond that, I think the length of his tenure was absolutely fine. I would have liked to have seen Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor get another series as well, especially if it meant more time with him, Bill and Nardole, as I think they're an absolutely brilliant TARDIS team together. And I wish that Jodie Whittaker's 13th Doctor had gotten a bit longer too. The fact that she had 3 seasons spread out throughout 5 years with a whole gap year and then a year of specials was a real shame, I think. I know they couldn't help taking a year off for 2019 as they wanted a bit more time to film Series 12, after they'd fallen a bit behind with filming Series 11 due to various factors. But if we had a full series in late 2019, then that would have been preferable to only having 1 episode that year. And it would have been good if Dan had been given more stories, as it really did feel like he was with the Doctor for no time at all. But I understand that was partly due to the restrictions put on the show by the COVID-19 pandemic, and that resulting in less episodes for Series 13, aka Flux. And I would have liked another episode or 2 with David Tennant's 14th Doctor actually. This is because I really liked how he was a much more mature and experienced version of the 10th Doctor, even if some fans don't like how it continued this feeling of 10 overshadowing 13. And I would have liked to have seen how this more mature version of 10 would have developed with a bit more runtime, but I understand that there were only supposed to be a handful of specials for the 60th. I do think it's a bit silly how Tennant is now part of the lineup of Doctors 3 times, if you count the Meta-Crisis Doctor, and I would have preferred it if 14 was called something like 13.5 or the Bridge Doctor, but that's not really what we're here to discuss, of course. I can't really comment on Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor yet, as obviously he's only had 1 story so far, with his first full series in the role coming in a couple of months. But I hope he stays on for at least the standard 3 years, perhaps even longer, although I don't know how likely that is. And yes, I do wish we'd have got a bit more time with both the War and Fugitive Doctors. I know Big Finish has already done plenty of audios with the War Doctor, and is planning on doing the same with Joe Martin's Fugitive, but a TV series focusing on them both would have been good to see, even if it's a bit more difficult now with the War Doctor, due to John Hurt's sad passing 7 years ago. I could go further and talk about other Doctors like Peter Cushing's Movie Doctor and Richard E. Grant's Schalke Doctor, but then we'd just be here all day, so I'm going to leave it there. Obviously, I'm not trying to change history, as it were. I just thought this would all make for a very interesting and fun discussion. But what do you think? Do you agree with my opinions of which Doctors should have had more or less time on TV? Or do you have any different thoughts? Please let me know in the comments section below. Anyway, so thanks for watching, I hope you liked it. Please don't forget to press that subscribe button below, as well as press the bell icon at the side of it, so that you'll stay notified of when all my new videos come out. This channel currently has 1,850 subscribers as of time of writing and recording this video, but if we can get to 2,500 by the end of this year, then I will do another Q&A. You can ask me whatever questions you want, just keep them polite please. Also please rate and comment below your thoughts on all of this, and please feel free to donate to my Ko-fi page, link in the description below, or send me a YouTube super thanks below, if you want to of course. And I shall see you all in another video. And thanks again to LeeBiggs14 for the idea for this video. So until next time, bye bye!